He was a former Southington High School history teacher, boys soccer coach, and girls tennis team coach from 1969 until his retirement in 2007. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes of November the 18th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, I'd like an approval of our special meeting minutes from November 20th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
All in, are you okay? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. And we are to communications. Communications from our student board representatives, please.
Good evening, board. I'd like to start today's report with some news from our arts programs. The Southington High School Drama Club just ended their run of The Last Gas. The show was incredible, and we commend everyone who was involved, especially the hard work put forth by the actors along with everyone behind the scenes. And although the show may be over, the Drama Club has not slowed down. The auditions for The Little Mermaid, our spring musical, will be taking place on Monday, with the shows taking place on March 4th and 5th. The winter concerts for the band ensembles, orchestra, and concert choir will be taking place on December 16th and December 20th.
Moving on to sports. The Southington High School fall athletics season wrapped up officially with Blue Knights football team defeating Cheshire High School 17-10 to win the Apple Valley Classic Trophy awarded to the winner of the annual Thanksgiving game. Then the team qualified for the CIAC Class Double L playoffs the following week, where it played New Canaan High School in the state quarterfinals, falling to the Rams by a score of 38-14. SHS winter sports competitions get underway at Southington High School starting next Tuesday, December 14th, when the Blue Knights girls basketball team hosts Avon at 6:45 p.m. The wrestling team will have its home opener on Wednesday, December 22nd versus Wethersfield. The boys basketball team will be playing its season opener at Trinity College, while they will meet Bristol Central on Saturday, December 18th at 12 o'clock noon. Followed by its home opener on Thursday, December 22nd versus Conard.
This past Monday, the American Legion dropped in on an SHS Key Club meeting to honor them for their help at the apple harvest. On Tuesday, they also stayed after school to help us decorate our main cafeteria for the holidays. Then, that following night, the Key Club officers inducted the new members for the 2021 to 2022 school year. There were refreshments afterwards as well. The American Legion also honored the SHS Band for the Veterans Day concert this past Tuesday. The SHS Band is also preparing for their holiday ensemble. This is where they are going to continue their tradition of marching through the hallways while playing Christmas music on the days leading up to Christmas break.
Continuing on to some news from the other schools in the district. South End celebrated their November Charter Champion at a virtual school-wide town meeting this week. Students are nominated by their peers for Best Living Their Classroom Charter. They are participating in a food drive and hat/mitten drive to support Southington Community Services that wraps up this week. They have already collected a lot of donations.
At JFK, yesterday the PTO sponsored their first entertainment assembly in years, virtual of course, virtual music technology with Brett Daniels. Students got a virtual look into a recording studio and interacted with Brent. JFK is in the process of purchasing the flags of 17 nations to be displayed in front of our lobby. The flags represent the nations where some of our current students have been born. At DePaulo, they're excited to share that DePaulo music students will be performing holiday concerts prior to the holiday break. The orchestra concert will be Monday, December 13th. The chorus concert will be Thursday, December 16th, and band concert will be Tuesday, December 21st. Students in the leadership program at DePaulo Middle School volunteered their time last week to do some bell ringing for the Salvation Army at Southington Walmart. As a result, they raised over $850.
Over the course of the last few weeks, there has been a lot of misinformation. As we know, current issues in the world are having an effect on students nationwide. Then, as you read in the news that threats are being made to schools as close as 15 minutes away, it begins to hit home. Yesterday, we had a great talk with Mr. Krakow, and we discussed ways to improve communication. He went over all that goes into investigating threats and handling school discipline. It was a productive conversation, and we appreciate the difficult work that our administrators have. We are working on a new form of communication between administration and students. Mr. Krakow's door is always open, and he's often seen in the hallways and in classrooms. We encourage everyone to reach out if you have a concern and know that he is and has been responsive and receptive to feedback. Thank you again.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, students. Does anyone have any comments or questions for our students?
Just one comment. I think that's wonderful that the principal and the students met to discuss that, and keep it up. Keep it up, because it is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, students. Okay, next on the agenda is communications from the public. And Miss Anastasia will take, if you could keep your time for me, please. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, I am Britt Lynch from Sheldon Road in Southington. Thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us today. First, I think it's been pretty well demonstrated at these meetings that the science says only N and K95 respirators that have been properly fitted are of any real benefit to containing the coronavirus. We know that the best mitigant is proper ventilation. We know that children are not at risk of severe disease, and that those who are at higher risk know how to reduce their risk of contracting viruses in general. We are now beginning to see frightening mental health repercussions that many saw coming. I know it is not all due to masks, but no one in their right mind would deny they are a factor. Children are being told that they are sick, that they cannot trust their bodies that feel healthy to them, and they are responsible for the health and even life of strangers. It is disgusting. But I'd like to make just a couple of points that may not have been made at these meetings yet. The first is for those who may be thinking the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children wear masks and get vaccinated. They can be trusted. They are a large group of respected medical professionals. But I encourage you to look at their list of major donors. Pfizer is at the top. This is a huge conflict of interest. There are plenty of organizations that disseminate medical information, such as clinical trial results, press releases from pharmaceutical companies, and opinion pieces from respected doctors and patients alike, that don't accept money from pharmaceutical companies for the reason that it can lead to bias in their publication of information, or even just perceived bias from the people in their community. The AAP should not be accepting donations from pharmaceutical companies, and it should give everyone pause when they read their recommendations. My second point is that at the last meeting, we were asked to give the board time to look into our concerns. This is a new board, and you need time. We respect that. But we were also told you may not like the answer. I get it if you come back to us and say, the law is the law, our hands are tied. Perhaps you think that on the issue of masks, you can just wait it out. By next fall, they'll go away. But think about where we were last year at this time. Vaccines were on the horizon. Did you ever think that in fall of this year, we'd still be in masks for these children? Perhaps you don't want to push back against mandates because you are afraid of repercussions in your job as well. But please remember, history is full of bad laws, from biblical times to recent history, and it is full of people standing against those bad laws in order to bring about what is right. The easiest example is probably Rosa Parks. Do you think it was easy for her to one day decide she's not going to sit at the back of the bus, that she's going to sit in the front? We are looking for that type of person on our Board of Education. We need to know if that's you or not. Lastly, please, I'm just going to finish up one sentence. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to support you as you look into these issues that we're bringing forth during these public commentary times. Clearly, we spend a lot of time researching these issues, and we're willing to put in the time to help in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Britt.
Steve Chesky, 191 Queen Street. I want to start by saying that I heard that the administration has started the process of uploading the curriculum online. So I don't know if that's true, but if it is, I want to say thanks for getting that ball rolling. I want to urge the board and the administration to implement a policy to require 72 hours notice minimum be given to parents before school-sanctioned events like the two speakers at Flanders last month. The way the school handled that, waiting until 10:41 p.m. the night before the event, cast a shadow over it. It looked shady and suspicious, like the school was trying to hide it from parents. Whether they really were trying to hide it or it was just a mistake, either way, the impression they gave was that my computer went out, was that they were trying to hide it. An impression that could have been avoided through proper notification. And when I say they, I want to be clear that I'm not referring to the two gentlemen who spoke. It was through no fault of their own that this shadow was cast over their event. It was the way it was handled by the school. And I think implementing this requirement that 72 hours notice be given to parents would avoid this kind of controversy happening again. At the last meeting, a high school student spoke about the injustice of how he was falsely accused of saying the N-word, and the people who accused him were given slaps on the wrist. And I reached out to members of the board about this. I spoke with Mrs. Clark yesterday, and speaking with her, I realized that I did not communicate clearly with you what I'm asking for here. So I want to clarify. I understand that you can't comment on the investigation or confidential student matters, and I wouldn't ask you to. I wouldn't ask you to do something that was unethical. What I'm asking for is a policy that a punishment in these matters be reciprocal. If a student would be expelled for saying the N-word, then a student who falsely accuses someone of saying the N-word should be expelled as well. If not expulsion, then whatever the punishment is. Whatever punishment you're exposing an innocent person to with your false accusation is the punishment you should receive for falsely accusing them. And I think the board or the administration, whoever's purview that is, should make that policy. Lastly, I want to again address critical race theory, which we talk about a lot at these meetings. And I want to address the 6 points again that Mr. Oshana brought up months ago. He's not here, apparently. I hope he's in good health. Again, I'm asking the board to put in writing that it's not allowed in Southington to teach that the U.S. is racist, that our founding documents are racist, that white people are racist, all that stuff. We could really end this whole issue if we put in policy that you can't teach those specific things, and then we wouldn't have to bring it up anymore if we could just get that done. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Young from Berkeley Avenue. At the last meeting, each of you sat here and listened as a student from Southington High School spoke out about his firsthand experiences with CRT, or as you are more comfortable calling it, diversity, equity, and social justice teaching classrooms. You listened to him tell you that during these teachings, he felt afraid, attacked, unwanted, uncomfortable, and less than. This student was brave to speak out about his experiences, and you have failed him by allowing these teachings to go on in our school. And instead of acknowledging that and what this student has endured, you paraded in diversity and equity speakers to do damage control after having invited them to Flanders School without parent knowledge and face backlash for doing so. Week after week, you continue to say that you are listening to us, but were you truly listening when one of our own students spoke out? How awful that some of your own children sat here and watched as you did nothing to condemn what this student went through as a result of these equity teachings. As a parent, it is both heartbreaking and infuriating to think of how this student must have felt knowing that not one board member had the decency to publicly acknowledge at that meeting what he went through, and I believe each of you owe that young man an apology. You sit here week after week and talk about how important our kids are to you, but yet you sit complicit while they continue to be burdened by your inaction. For the sake of our children, you must do better. Our kids are being burdened every day by mask mandates, social distancing, and divisive teachings. It is stealing their childhood, and it needs to stop. Children do not need to be constantly reminded of their differences that, let's be honest, most kids don't even recognize until you guys start placing such an emphasis on them. If anything, we could learn a thing or two from all of our children. Kids see character and whether or not someone's nice to them or shares with them or likes the same sports teams as them. These equity teachings are magnifying differences instead of celebrating these children's similarities. You're dividing instead of uniting. Regardless of your intent, our kids are not sent to school to be taught how to be social justice warriors. We don't place them in your care to be indoctrinated by activist teachers. It is not your job to mold their morals, their gender identity, or their political affiliations. We send them to school to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. And recent Southington test scores are showing that those things are not even being taught adequately. So please, stay in your lane and leave the character building and moral teachings to the parents where it belongs. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak?
Good evening. I wanted to talk a little bit about the mental health crisis that's been growing and affecting our children.
Excuse me, before you start, could you just say your name and your
Sure.
address for the record, please?
Sure. It's Valerie Raguchi, 102 West Street.
Thank you.
Again, I wanted to speak about the growing mental health crisis that's affecting our children in public schools. But first, I want to congratulate the new Board of Ed members and those that have been reelected. You were chosen by parents to help represent us in making sure the schools are protecting and doing right by our children. I can only speak firsthand on what it's like to parent older children, and I can tell you they are being scarred. My oldest son is a junior in public high school, currently witnessing firsthand what is causing this growing mental health crisis in students, and it isn't coming from the fear of COVID. He spoke about these issues recently at the State of Connecticut Board of Ed meeting. The mental health issues in children stem from adults in positions of leadership and their unnecessary COVID rules and mandates that our children are being forced to comply with. Adults that should know better and be helping these kids get their lives back to normal need to work on rectifying their education and the fun they've missed out on and currently missing out on. We need to stop the fear and guilt of them being forced to vaccinate with an experimental shot that we don't know the long-term effects on. These kids are being unfairly punished for not wearing their masks over their nose, threatened with detentions, suspensions, and even expulsion in some cases. And I think that's very unfair for them, and it's very stressful for them as well. And all of this is causing division, especially with school sports, with close contact and vaccination status rules. The children are also witnessing the abuse and or dismissal of teachers they love, and the unjust punishment such as suspension, as I said, and bullying from not following COVID rules and mask mandates. Our children are not being protected from what is really of harm to them, and they are being let down because the true root of the cause is not being addressed. Please listen to the children and their truth and be part of the change to stop the facade. This is what you were elected by the people to do. Thank you. This is my daughter, Gianna Raguchi, and she has a few words she'd like to say.
Hi, my name is Gianna. I'm 11 years old. I want you to know that I have the choice in my school to wear a mask or not. I think other kids should have the choice too. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Michael Kurzansky, 27 Hitching Post Drive. My speech might go slightly over, so if someone might be willing to read the rest of it, I'd appreciate it. I'm talking about COVID and attending school. First, I'd like to thank everyone for the new screen and stay policy related to a student being in close contact with someone diagnosed with COVID and being able to continue to attend school without having to quarantine as long as the student is asymptomatic. This is a very positive development and keeps kids from having to miss school unnecessarily. Another scenario that's concerning, an unvaccinated student at Southington High School, this is an experience or people I know, tests positive for COVID and must quarantine for 10 days. Her symptoms were a sore throat, congestion, and headache for about a week. After a week, she was completely better. Her sister is in 7th grade at DePaulo. The sister, who is unvaccinated as well, had no symptoms and was ordered to quarantine for the same duration of time. There was not really an option to have a COVID test, and if negative, have the option to return to school. The school nurse said that the option was really complicated and most likely not worth exploring. If the sister was vaccinated, however, she would not need to be quarantined, would not need to be tested, and would not need to miss any school. In addition, for the high school homecoming dance, unvaccinated students are required to be tested for COVID, but vaccinated students are not. So, my understanding is that both vaccinated and unvaccinated people can both be infected and spread COVID. It's a fact. There's no arguing that. So when one child tests positive for COVID, why doesn't a vaccinated sibling need to be tested for COVID and or quarantine, right? They can spread it too. So what's the difference there? If COVID is such a risky proposition for public health, why do vaccinated persons not need to be tested or quarantined when someone else in the same household is infected with COVID? What about people with natural immunity who have had COVID already? Shouldn't the rules be different for them? Also, it has been shown that the COVID vaccinations lose their effectiveness over time. So should the date from which someone was vaccinated also factor into decisions related to the need to quarantine? For example, if someone was vaccinated a month ago, should the quarantine rules for that person be more lenient than someone who was vaccinated 9 months ago? Should whether a person has had a COVID booster shot play a role as well? Who's making these rules, and do they actually make any sense? From what I have read, Florida is one of the least restrictive states in terms of COVID regulations, and yet has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, rates of positive COVID tests in the country now. COVID's here to stay, okay? It's not going anywhere. Lockdowns and restrictions do not help to prevent the spread of COVID and may, in fact, make things worse. I've never experienced before in my life a situation, and I'm almost done if anyone can read the rest of it. I'm sure there's a volunteer out there. No one? Okay, I'll have to end there.
Is there anyone else in the public that wants to speak?
I'm Kristin Ritchie of Chesterwood Terrace. First, I would like to thank Mr. Medancy, who has been attentive to parents' concerns and has enabled our elementary students to spend more time outdoors by procuring tents and outdoor furniture. While it would have been ideal for elementary school principals to have prioritized outdoor learning and play opportunities much earlier in the pandemic, the reality is some didn't, and Mr. Medancy acted promptly when we raised this concern. Thank you. In regard to masking our children, you have heard hundreds of testimonies by now illustrating how detrimental masking has been to certain children, and by this point, given the longevity of masking our children, we can be relatively certain that all elementary school children have been and continue to be harmed. I will resend you the exhibit I've submitted of the greater than 40 potentially adverse impacts of long-term mask wearing, so it's at the top of your inbox and hopefully advances to top of mind. I've been here and at the State Board of Ed to raise the concern related to the denial of mask exemptions written by qualified pediatric specialists. No one here on the board or school nurses or a school medical director is more qualified than these pediatric specialists. I have emails from an attorney at the State Department of Ed who continues to respond that each district can adopt their own policies and procedures for decision-making related to these exemptions. Therefore, it is time for the board and the superintendent to do the right thing, in accordance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and uphold the medical mask exemptions as written by students' doctors. The State Department of Ed's guidance is guidance, not a mandate or law, even says their attorney, and I will forward this supporting documentation to you from their attorney. In addition, I'm respectfully requesting the following 4 actions be taken. First, the proper due diligence related to ventilation is pursued and improvements implemented where applicable. My husband Todd will give an update on this tonight, but my prelude is that we were informed that the assessment we requested was performed, yet there seems to be no documentation from a licensed company with the procedures performed, measurements and calculations, nor any recommendations or conclusions. Second, this board submit a formal communication to the Governor's Office, DPH, and Department of Ed requesting that the statewide mask mandate as well as other COVID-related protocols in the schools end and that you retain control of your district's policies. Third, a member of this board should attend the DPH SDE Health and Safety weekly meeting on Tuesdays from 8 to 9 a.m. virtually and vocalize the themes of parents' concerns brought to your attention either in the meetings as time allows or as email follow-ups. Fourth, lastly, and just as importantly, I am requesting that the superintendent and or board provide a monthly summary at these board meetings of the COVID mitigation related inquiries and comments raised to the DPH and SDE and the responses received. Thank you all for your dedication to your roles. Happy holidays to you and your families. You can make the new year even brighter by taking action to give our children the school experiences they deserve.
Good evening. My name is Todd Ritchie of Chesterwood Terrace. The COVID-19 crisis has put a spotlight on decades of neglect and the growing deficiencies of school infrastructure, including HVAC systems. The vast majority of classrooms in the United States fail to meet minimum ventilation rates, and those inadequacies have had an especially major impact on our ability to provide safe learning environments as the virus remains in our communities. It is a complex subject, but critical for preventing the spread of coronavirus today and improving educational outcomes tomorrow. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency details how improved air quality improves academic performance. Studies demonstrate a connection between improvements in indoor air quality, either from increased outdoor air ventilation rates or from the removal of pollution sources, and improved performance of children and adults. Controlled studies show that children perform schoolwork with greater speed as ventilation rates increase. The performance of adults, including teachers and school staff, also has been shown to improve with higher ventilation rates. Children in classrooms with higher outdoor air ventilation rates tend to have achieved higher scores standardized tests in math and reading than children in poorly ventilated classrooms. If you agree with the statements I've made this far, then you would also be agreeing with your own school administrators, because everything I've said so far is on their website, the Southington School Administrators Association website, which is verbatim from their website. So maybe you want to check that out. Mr. Romano has repeatedly acknowledged to my wife and I that our son's school, Flanders, as well as Zabahanski and Kelly schools, are so old that their classroom heating and ventilation systems are outdated and do not provide air filtration and fresh air changes to meet current minimum air quality standards. When he informed us after the BOE meeting that he was having an engineer visit each of these schools to make recommendations for indoor air quality improvements, including the possibility of using portable air filtration units, we thought that was great. However, the follow-up email he sent us yesterday focused on why he thought filtration units were not necessary. He mentioned noise, space, and cost, and he concluded that classroom windows would be left open, including during the winter with the heat turned up in the room. Today it was 36 degrees out during lunchtime, and I drove by Zabahanski School and only 2 windows were open along the front of the building. I also drove by Flanders and observed from the parking lot that only 1 window was open on the entire west side of the building. Mr. Romano also opined that he didn't think the filtration units would be effective for COVID-19 mitigation. If they are so ineffective, then why do all 56,000 New York City school classrooms have 2 air purifiers in each classroom as of this past September? Why were 4,600 HEPA air purifier units purchased and installed in all classrooms in Howard County, Maryland? Why were 20,000 HEPA air purifier units purchased and installed in all classrooms of the city of Chicago? Why did the city of Norwalk install UV HEPA filters in every classroom? Why are health officials at UConn making indoor air filters out of box fans, high-quality air filters, cardboard, and duct tape and giving them to schools such as West Hartford? No one is asking for money to be spent where it's not needed. ESSER, GEAR, and HERE funds can support both immediate actions and longer-term projects, including the inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrading of projects to improve indoor air quality in school facilities. This can include upgrades, filtering, purification, other air cleaning fans, and window and door repair. I have 2 more sentences. The board needs to take indoor air quality in our schools seriously right now. The town of Wilton recently paid a $500,000 settlement in a lawsuit over indoor air quality in a school filed by parents of students. Perhaps now they wish they spent that money on making improvements to the school instead.
Susan Zabahanski from Plantsville. The first thing I'd like to say is it's come to my attention that at least one, if not more, board members believe it's not their responsibility to speak to people who are not parents of students in the Southington School District. I just like to remind you that you were all elected by all the citizens in Southington to represent them. You're here to represent every citizen in Southington, even those who didn't vote for you. This includes parents, students, taxpayers, including senior citizens who are struggling to heat their homes and feed themselves and get their medications when it's time to make the Board of Ed budget. Close to 70% of the collected taxes in this town go to the Board of Ed budget, and near the same percentage of people in this town do not have children in the Southington school systems. So to hear that someone doesn't think that every parent or citizen in this town has the right to come to these meetings, to me is disturbing. The other thing I'd like to mention is I would hope that all the subcommittee meetings be held in person. If our children are being forced to have classes in person and no longer have a virtual option, I think that every meeting should be that way. So I'm hoping that going forward that happens. I know that the Board of Education Subcommittee financial meeting was held virtually with people only being allowed to telecommunicate in, so they didn't even get to see it. That's my first issue. So the other thing I'd like to talk about is I appreciate that I did hear from the student who reached out last meeting, and that you guys are handling that in a much better manner. And on his behalf, I'd like to thank you for that. He can't attend tonight. He was satisfied that it's being investigated, and I appreciate you guys doing that. The other thing I'd like to mention is that none of the the only mandate in place for our school system is the mask mandate. Every other thing, and I think Kristin said this as well, is policy that you can accept or deny. The only thing you have to abide by that's law is a mask mandate. And it's, that holds the force of law. It's not a law, but it's, a mandate which holds the force of law. I'd like to mention that there are 9 states only in this whole United States that have mask mandates in place. And there are only 27 schools, states in the United States that do not have mask policies in place for their school systems. We have asked you time and time again to represent us in the state, at the state level, to say that we don't want these mask mandates in place. If there was such a problem with masking with 27 states, we would hear about it. So please represent us in Hartford. I appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Colleen Dabkowski, and I live in Plantsville. I wanted to first congratulate all of you who have come welcomed on the board and re-elected as well. I'm hoping with the new board, because there was a lot of help with many here who have spoken to get many of you elected. Maybe a lot of work behind the scenes. We put signs in our yard. We did that for a reason, and we hope that the promises made, promises kept is going to happen. Having said that, I would like also some support at the at the state level to push back to not have the state of Connecticut part of the National School Association. Many states have decided to remove themselves. I think that is a smart decision considering how parents were treated. Whether or not, because that letter was retracted after the fact, it's like already having your hands caught in the cookie jar. So having the Department of Justice table us as something as such in relation to that letter that was from the National Association, I think is terrible when we don't have even local boards, whether or not you have. I would appreciate it if you do. Maybe some of you can join the next meeting at the state level. Also, I found out that we can no longer yield time. I have heard that there could be a potential of extending the time. I hope that's relayed to us, that the time will be extended to 4 or 5 minutes, because it is already nerve-wracking to come up here and to express ourselves for the caring of kids. In addition to what was already said about whether or not your students go here and they should be allowed to speak or really be heard. The kids are our future. We are going to have even if we have kids that have already graduated, we're going to have probably grandchildren. All of this is a reflection about how our whole society works. And I do believe that the masking is causing anxiety and stress. I don't know that you know that I'm a holistic life coach, yoga teacher. I do a lot of spiritual work, and I do a lot of counseling. And there are parents that are coming to me now knowing the difference of what's happening to their children. So firsthand, I'm saying this is a problem, and we're all going to pay for it later. And so the thing of it is, I understand it's a mandate, but slavery was law. The Holocaust was law. Segregation was law. I also want to thank you that you don't have right now clinics in schools. I appreciate that. We are not a hospital. Schools are not hospitals. It should not happen here. So I'm glad that that's still going on. And if you do add the clinics to school, it's just going to add segregation to kids. Did you get your vaccine? No, you didn't get your vaccine. That's not fair to them. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? No? Okay, thank you all. Next, communication from the board. Anyone wish to speak?
No, I'm good, thanks.
I'd like to just say a couple of words. So again, thank you for parents and citizens for coming out and voicing your concerns. Again, we're hearing them. We're going to be working to help remedy a lot of these things. It's certainly from me as an individual. A couple of things as far as ventilation concerns. I happen to agree with a lot of what is said. So I think that may be something certainly I wouldn't mind trying to spearhead and see what we can do as far as what we could do for bringing in reusable machines maybe into the classrooms that could potentially get cycled. Again, COVID's not going away, but flu season is going to eventually come back and things like that. Cycles of air changing over in rooms will cut down on that. So I think that's something potentially that we can utilize moving forward in the district, depending costs and that type of thing, of course. As far as some of the issues faced with the mask wearing, again, the masks are mandate, but as far as how we deal with situations where I think are, if were you exposed, were you not exposed, everything else, we oftentimes don't realize how much power we have as the individual. Again, the reason I'm here is because my kids are in the gallery today, and you have to make a decision at some point as the most important teacher in my two kids' life is myself and my wife. And I respect every single one of the administrators, every single one of these people on the board, and every one of their teachers that they've had. But my wife and myself are the most important teachers to my kids. And part of that is also mitigating, again, when you go for a test, you make that decision to go for a test. Again, I'm a nurse. I know that if my kids are sick, number one, they're not going to school. If they have a fever, they're staying home and they're not going back to school for 24 hours post-fever. Like, these are simple things that people can do, and you avoid the whole issue of the test and then we're playing hokey pokey. So, even when we start to talk about with Mr. Vivian and Pastor Donaldson there, there's a couple of words that really grind me. I hate the term social justice because it implies that justice needs to be served for some sort of crime that's been committed. I understand where it's coming from. I understand where people sort of like, well, this is what we mean by it, but regardless of what it means, like, this is what it means to me. And at the end of the day, it's up to us as the parents, as us as community members to, again, if a child hears something that we don't necessarily agree with, it's up to us as the most important person in that child's life is to tease information out of them and essentially try and figure out, okay, like what does that mean to them? And are we overreacting because of where we're coming from? Or is it something that warrants the reaction? So it's, again, I appreciate the civility that we've been able to demonstrate thus far, and we continue to demonstrate. And, I think your concerns are being heard. Again, there's no doubt in my mind that every single one of these people on this board is not trying to work within the confines of what we can. And at the end of the day, it's about delivering safe, effective, and good education to our kids so that they're afforded the same opportunities that we have been. So thank you again.
Anyone else? James? Did you want to?
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll just say congratulations to the SHS Blue Knights for beating Cheshire on Thanksgiving.
I could get behind that.
It was a good game. It was a good game. It was a good game. I just want to make mention of the fact that yesterday I attended a CABE conference. I wish all the board members were able to go, and I know work commitments usually pose problems with trying to do something during the day. But in any event, I have a folder that I took that gives you the highlights of what was being presented, such as the role of the Board of Ed, effective board meetings. We had a speaker from the Deputy Commissioner of Connecticut State Department of Education on the state of public education in Connecticut. Talked about board leadership in these times, and the roles and responsibilities of the board and the superintendent was also discussed. I have a couple of takeaways, which Mr. Medancy, I'm sure, is going to elaborate a little on. But my takeaways were building relationships. Building relationships, it's key within your community and within the state in order to get things done. For board members, Tyler, I'm going to borrow a line that you used. It was said to me yesterday, and it meant something. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. We do policy, and the superintendent does the regulations. So that's something we have to remember. You don't always know what you don't know, so ask questions, but understand what question you are asking, because you never want to embarrass anybody in public. Communication should always be respectful. Board members should be on boards to serve the children of their communities. That's why we do what we do. And lastly, board members donate a lot of time. And that was one thing that everyone there all agreed on. Board members donate a lot of time. So it was a good conference. CABE does a nice job with their speakers, and they keep you right on track. So, Mr. Medancy, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Okay, and that's all I have. So, moving right along, communication from the administration.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. A few things to share this evening. First, I'd like to congratulate and excited to announce that the YMCA is recognizing our STEPS program and particularly the Asset Building Classrooms for the Youth Development Award this year. So at the annual YMCA award celebration in February, and it's bestowed upon an individual or group who has worked to nurture the potential of youth and or teens in the community. ABC has been awarded for helping to instill our 40 developmental assets in our children and teens in Southington. As you know, this was a grassroots effort that started in the community several years ago, and it is a model program across the state, and they often are showcasing their work there. Also, the Connectivity Fund Grant. This is also excited to announce this is an optional grant that we could have applied for, and I will say our network manager, Tyler Savage, worked very hard on this grant, and the district procured $710,000 in grant money to replace 2,000 Chromebooks and another 310 MacBooks. We got $400 off a device to save another $124,000 for the districts. So as far as our device renewal and replacement plan, this definitely puts us on the right track in that area. Credit to him. A lot of information needs to be gathered. There's a lot of restrictions, as you can imagine, in terms of the deployment, the asset management, the inventorying, and then the follow-up reporting with the state on the deployment of those devices, but certainly helps us in our continued efforts with one-to-one instruction. And then just prior to Thanksgiving, I had a great opportunity to attend a program at the Karen Smith Academy provided by Lisa Inc. through a grant with the Main Street Foundation. And it was for seniors, and it was a program where they, over a period of time and days, participated in a workshop series focused on improving their communication and employment skills. Over the days, the students participated in interactive life skills lessons led by the program director and a division of community solutions. And I'll tell you, when I was there for the celebration, the kids were very proud. They were getting clothes for interviews. They had already had interview preparation. They had shared a lot of what they took from it in terms of professional correspondence with potential employers. Just a really, positive event for the kids. You could tell they were proud of their completion, and it was great to see. I mean, they even had a whole assortment of clothes, so kids actually got to be like, well, can I have that instead of that? And they left with, outfits that would make them proud to walk into an interview and ready, to be their best. So thank you to Lisa Inc. for that activity. I know it was mentioned tonight about a child vaccine clinic. The town is planning on hosting a child vaccine clinic, not in our schools. It'll be hosted by the Southington Plainville Local Health Department. It'll be at the Calendar House on a Saturday in January. They have not determined which date yet. They're either looking at January 8th or 15th. And then lastly, I had an opportunity to go to the Board of Finance meeting last night, along with a few board members. Thank you for joining me and Mrs. Mellett. We had a very productive conversation. I think we're all on the same page in terms of what the goals are this budget season, but really looking 3 years out, given the potential for a fiscal cliff and the understanding that the grant funds will no longer be at some point. And so they asked a lot of good questions about our use of the funds, some of the goals coming into this budget season for our plans, and I think a really strong, positive, collaborative start with the Board of Finance. So I look forward to my continued work with them. And that's it.
Any questions for Mr. Medancy? Thank you, Mr. Medancy. Okay, next up is committee reports. We have policy and personnel.
Yeah, Madam Chair, the Policy and Personnel Committee, we met on December 6th. The methods of operation policy 9325 was reviewed and contained some suggested revisions. Discussion ensued around Robert's Rules of Order and then the board's bylaws. We also talked about meeting conduct. There's a suggestion right now to increase the individual public input time from 3 to 5 minutes, but still allowing the board chair to modify this limitation based on the agenda and what we have in front of us for that meeting. Likewise, we also talked about there used to be a sign-up process which the public would record their respective names, address, and topics and comments. We talked about that. And then there's a suggested revision which codifies a member of the public should be a Southington resident to participate during the public comment. And we'll move that for first reading later on tonight.
Okay, can I does anyone have any questions, first off? Because I just want to make a comment. The sheet that is used for the sign-in does have, which I see, but I don't think anybody else sees, from the minutes, it does have what your purpose is when you're talking. Yeah, was that what you were referring to in those?
Yeah, I guess there was, yeah, go ahead.
If I can, in changing the policy to 3 to 5 minutes and giving the chair the option to adjust that time in the event that there were a lot of people. You don't know how many people are going to be coming. In the past, we used to have a sign-in book that as you entered the meeting, you'd sign your name, your address, similar to what you do now, and then the book would be handed to the chair. And then the chair would call the names, so there was an order in which the people would come up to the podium. Anybody that didn't get to sign in because they came in late would then be asked to, if they wish to speak. So nobody was locked out of speaking, but it just gives a little bit more order. Plus, it gives the chair the option of, to the new law, the new bylaws that we're looking to adjust, of increasing the time. But again, we don't want to have meetings going into midnight either.
No, I understand. Because I remember years ago, before I was on the board, when I used to come, when you were the chair, Mr. Daranowski, to complain about, whatever I was complaining about. I was the PTO president, and it was the curtains at South End School that were disintegrating. Do you remember the night I gave you the bill? So I remember signing in a book, but I didn't realize that was something that you were able to adjust the amount of time given to people. Is that what?
That's added.
That's what you would do. Okay, that's what you would be able to do.
So the
Okay.
idea is we extend from 3 to 5 minutes, right? So we allow everyone to have that time, but we also have the ability to kind of have an understanding of what that timeline is going to look like for the night. Right?
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't quite sure, because I do know that now people are signing in and they do say what they're signing in for, they're going to speak about. So I didn't know if that was, okay.
There wouldn't be any change to that.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Raguchi?
One other question. So the part that you were talking about in the policy of being a Southington resident, was there any change?
There's no change. It's just, it wasn't called out. It wasn't specifically said before. So we wanted to just codify that in the language. So it said any Southington resident, right, has the ability to speak.
Okay. And I guess my other only caveat with that, so would that limit, so say we have a student that's participating from, say, like a Hartford, right? And if their parent wanted to come and speak at a board meeting or what have you, would that limit them because they wouldn't technically be a resident of Southington?
I think we got to look at it. I think from again, the idea around public comment, even the way that we have been operating, right, has been Southington residents speak during public comment.
Right.
You're talking about a student that
Goes to
goes
Southington.
to Southington
Right,
High
if,
School, but
if
is
their
from
if their
Hartford.
parent had a concern,
That's
or
a,
even
that's a question, Joe.
or
you know?
even if they had a concern.
know.
Again, like I'm not. You don't want. I know that there were situations
Yeah,
where
so-
you have other people. Sort
Yeah, you could have students in the Ag Sci program from many
Out of
surrounding
town.
towns, or a student from the
Yeah,
Choice
that's-
program. And I see what you're saying. So maybe you codify it, or the parent of a student enrolled in the Southington Public
Right.
Schools within the
Agreed,
language.
yeah.
Maybe we just.
Good
So
news is
either-
tonight's a
and
first
either-
read, so that's an easy enough.
All right, so
adjustment.
an either or situation, either you're a Southington resident or a parent
Have a
of a
parent of a
Southington
student.
school.
Absolutely. I don't think
Yeah.
we don't have any intention of limiting that
Yeah, no. I mean, Southington residents are always welcome to come and speak at the meeting. It doesn't, somebody brought it up before that people were not encouraged to speak. Any Southington resident is encouraged to come to our meeting and speak. I've never heard of that before. So if that would clarify it a little bit better,
Yes.
a Southington student, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, that was policy. Mr. Sharnowski, finance.
So the Finance Committee had met on December 2nd to discuss 3 items. So the first item was a bid award for various improvements on the varsity softball field at Southington High School. The scope of the project included demolition of existing backstop fences, player benches, and dugouts, and essentially reinstallation of all of that. Backstop fencing, benches, dugouts, bullpens, and asphalt walkways. 2 vendors had submitted bids, and the Finance Committee has recommended that U.S. Pitch Care of Northford, Connecticut be awarded the bid. Lowest and most responsible bidder.
Up too high.
I don't know if I make
Before.
The heat's causing it. Sorry, Mrs. Carmody. Yeah, that's better.
Sure. So this award was for $179,200 and included the entire scope of the project I just mentioned, as well as new netting, a fence safety cap, and a wind and privacy system for the dugout structure. And so I have a motion here, and so I move to award bid number 2022-06 for varsity softball improvements to U.S. Pitch Care as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So the second item was very similar. It was also another bid award for various improvements to the varsity baseball field at the Southington High School. And this included removal of the existing lip at the edge of the infield horseshoe, as well as rehabilitation and amendment to existing infield material, and also topsoil and sodding of disturbed lawn areas and adjustment of irrigation heads. Two vendors had also submitted two vendors had also submitted bids, and the Finance Committee has recommended that U.S. Pitch Care of Northford also be awarded this bid, as they were also the lowest and most responsible bidder. This bid is for $17,900 and includes the entire scope of the project, as well as an additional fence safety cap. Looking for that. So I move to award bid number 2022-113 for varsity baseball improvements to U.S. Pitch Care as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. The last item I have is just a transfer of funds from the Library Brooks account to the school-based instructional technology account. And this was because there was some software that was purchased under the library books account, so it's just an adjustment of accounting. I have a motion there also to move to approve the transfer of funds from the high school library account to the school-based software account as presented.
Second.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
That is all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Trojanowski. Okay, next on our agenda is the personnel report.
Move to approve the personnel report as submitted.
Questions of anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
Old business, town government communications. Anything? I just wanted to reiterate that last night, Jasper, James, and I were in the audience. We sat down to listen at the Board of Finance meeting. It was high-level discussions. It was talking just to start the conversation about what we're looking at for next year. Nicely done, Mr. Medancy and Mrs. Mallet. I just have to say that again. I was grateful to hear one sentence, though. When all the questions were answered and asked, Mr. Leary, who was there remotely, said that he wanted us to know that the Board of Finance was not just about money. They realized that we have an obligation to educate the children of Southington. And that struck me because it's not just about the money, it's about the kids. So I just wanted to share that I had a good feeling when we left the meeting last night that we're off to a good start. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I see Councilwoman Triano, the chair, and were you, sir? I'm sorry. Mr. Palmieri sitting in our morning. You know them? And Mr. Palmieri, you'll have to forgive me. My brain is not working tonight, and I'm really not good with names on a good day. I just want to let you know that Reverend Triano has said that we are going to have a meeting of the chairs. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we will have it. She's nodding her head. I'm nodding my head. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. So I just wanted to let you know. Okay, so we have that. Okay, next is our capital improvement plan for 2022, 23 to 2026, 27 at second reading. I am looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the capital plan as presented.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Nope. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. Okay. New business, the proposed 2022-23 school calendar. We have our first reading tonight. Anyone wish to say anything? I love the, yes, Mr. Darrenowski.
Are you making an assumption that you will be sending this out to the PTOs? After, just like we normally do. Just want to make sure we have a new regime. I just want to make sure that we don't miss a beat.
Yeah, I usually like to get your feedback first in case there's any questions about certain dates or times, and then I would make the adjustments for sending it out. Since you guys ultimately adopt it. So, given that,
And I might add, I like the change. I like the color coding, although I have a black and white printer at work, but I do like, what I do like actually, and this is because I like having the numbers listed, the phone numbers for all the schools listed in one place with the principals' names. I do like that. I appreciate that. So,
well, the credit should go to Mrs. Colgrove.
well, Mrs. Colgrove,
It was her mission this year to provide a different format that was a little more user friendly for the community. So,
okay, well,
credit to her.
please thank her from me because I think she did a great job with it. Okay. So if you have any comments or questions, get back to me or get back to Mr. Medancy regarding it before our next meeting. Okay. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's annual report. Let me get that out. And we're
Move to
open.
approve the superintendent's 2020 to 2021 annual report as presented.
Second.
Oh, my. Okay, does anyone have any comments?
I do.
Carmody.
First, did you allow me to speak?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mrs. Carmody.
I really did spend a lot of time reading this. I read it, and I'm just so proud of all the things that go on in all our schools. I don't know, is this made public to?
Yeah, this is actually a requirement of the town charter that the
Right,
district
so the
submits an
public
annual
gets to
report each
read
year.
Everything that went on in the schools this year. Extremely well done. To think of all of the things that are, it's hard for us to know everything that's going on in every school every single day, but it was just heartwarming to read all of that. There was one particular thing that I read that, of course, being the old history teacher that I am, and we'll use the word old very loosely here. I read a section on the elementary social studies. Being on the curriculum committee, I do remember this very well, but I think it's important for the public to make sure that they read that part about the social studies coordinator, a new unit for reading and social studies, where they are going to, for reading and content areas and how key events shape nations. Very, very important, especially today, with the civil rights movement and continuing to fight for equality. The unit aims to strengthen students' reading, research skills, and support students in assessing complex texts. The unit has also supported standards for exploring the struggle for freedom, equality, and social justice by exploring the civil rights movement. And it is, I think that kind of fits in with all of the discussions that we've had about CRT and so forth. But I believe that when you are teaching history, you have to be inclusive when you're teaching history. And that means that you have to teach all of the things that happened in the past to the students and let them use their thinking skills presented with this material and have them exercise critical thinking and making decisions. So I was very, very impressed with this entire report. Very good job. Very, very proud of it. Thank you. We did have a vote, a motion, and something.
Yeah, and I just want to say something. It always impresses me when we do this, the time and energy and effort that goes into it. So please thank all the administrators. And what I also always love about this is even though we have 8 elementary schools that are teaching the same thing, the flavor from each of the school and what you hear from each school is so different, and they're so each individual school, and yet they do the same thing, and it's just wonderful. So please thank our administrators for the work that they had to put in for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And next is our policy first reading, 9325. If you have any questions or comments regarding that, please get back to Jasper regarding those. If you have anything, okay?
We'll make the changes to that
Yeah.
one
Right.
section of
And
language, sure.
if there's anything, if you think of anything, obviously just get back, okay? And now we have our staff coming up to speak regarding the GPA and weighing proposal for the high school. First read. I'm very excited. Huh? Was it? Oh. I don't know. Thought I just.
Ask me to
Bring down the light.
I brought reinforcements.
Tease me with this, John.
That's not good. All right.
the
What are you eating?
Tell him.
Here, you want this?
Did you steal that from him?
Yeah, I stole it from him, yes. I was a little upset, but I didn't get anything from them. Sorry. I'm their fancy liaison. That's all right. Her and I are gonna have a nice little meeting.
I have to separate you. I have to separate you two. I'm gonna have to, would you
I see
stop?
I see what you're doing over there.
You children need to stop.
Hey, that calendar, we didn't get copies of that yet, right? I'm not
Yeah, we did.
mistaken.
Yeah, we did.
Where'd we get it?
Found it in- Yep. Mr. Medancy, I'm gonna let you intro this, what we're doing, or Mr. Pepe, whoever would like to do it.
But do it in a movie announcer voice or something.
Coming soon.
Coming soon to Southington High School. Just when you thought GPAs were confusing.
I can go.
That's what I'm hoping.
So this is,
Thank you. This is a presentation that went before the curriculum instruction meeting in October, I believe, and the request was that it be presented to the full board. This is Jen DeSenza. She is head of school counseling. Who do you have with you? Do you want to introduce?
I'm going to do introduction.
Go ahead.
So I have with me this evening Anna Napolitano. She's one of the school counselors. And I actually have a staff member virtual, Beth Fiennes. She's another school counselor. Although I just put my screen up, so now. But she's on and she's going to be joining us this evening. We thank you for having us. Welcome to the new board members. I am the director of school counseling, as Mr. Pepe said. We're excited to be here tonight. And we're going to talk about GPA and academic levels at Southington High School. We're very passionate about this work that we've been coming up with, and we hope that you enjoy what we share with you this evening. I'm going to start with a little bit of history, and to let you know, if you were not aware, that the high school used to have 4 levels, and back during NEASC in 2010, it was dropped down from 4 to 3. And we've been kind of working under this system where you see the 1, 2, 3 for the last 11 years, 12 years. And now we just had NEASC again recently come to us in 2020. And their recommendation was to research, review, and revise our leveling practices. We feel strongly that as our leveling practices are being looked at, it would be very beneficial to concurrently look at our GPA weighting system. So you're going to kind of hear about both of those things this evening. We often will analyze our data, and as you can see up here, this was our class of 2021. And we've been looking for a long time about how our GPA system impacts our students when they go through the college application process. We have a large number of students with high GPAs. 66% last year had a 90 or above. There's been numerous conversations that we've been having as schools counseling staff with our college representatives over this kind of like top heavy GPA range that we have. And what we've learned in our research is that almost all colleges are recalculating our GPA system during their application process. The issue for Southington students is that the current GPA system provides students with sort of a false sense and interpretation when those GPAs are recalculated by the colleges. This was from our class of 2020. So as I said, our current GPA system is really negatively impacting our students when they go through our college application process. And we've been receiving a lot of feedback, negative, from parents and students as they're going through this too, because when they have to recalculate it themselves during the college application, and then when they find out what colleges have recalculated it to in their own way, it's less than what expected. So because of our current GPA system not aligning with the college recalculation system, it tends to bring some negativity towards our system.
Can I interject for a second? So you may remember a few years back, Mr. Oshana raised this concern because right around graduation time, he had heard from families that students lost out on merit scholarships because when they thought they were applying to schools thinking that they would have qualified based on what their GPA was, but when the university recalculated it, they didn't meet the qualifications and they lost out on that. So it's something that's we've been talking about for a little while here, and it's just kind of continuing to percolate.
And a couple of years ago, I'm speaking to what Steve just said, a couple of years ago, we did remove rank off of our official transcript. So we're still tracking rank internally, but we took it off the transcript, and that feedback was, made from our experiences that our students were having. And college representatives and other area high schools, to be honest with you, we're removing it too. We want colleges to look at our students holistically and not by a number. The removal of rank has helped that with our students in the college application process. So we're hoping that we can revamp our GPA system, and that will benefit our students too.
A lot of that also has to do with the size of our high school. So when you're 100 out of a class of 500, you might very well be 20 out of a class of 100, right? And so it just provides, how do you compare? And a lot of the schools and universities have said that, they really don't rely on rank that much, because number 4 at East Granby High School and number 4 at Southington High School, there's nowhere to compare given the class sizes.
So our proposal tonight comes after lots of research and conversations with a lot of the schools that our students apply to and attend. So we have the list up here. And as you can see or read, a lot of them recalculate our GPA. So that's where the disparity comes in for the admissions process. Our students are looking at their GPA and looking at the averages that school accepts, thinking, well, gee, I fall right into that range. However, these schools are recalculating our GPA. And so, as you can see, they're giving extra weight to only the honors and AP, which completely eliminates the weight for that CCP level, making it difficult for those students, which is why in speaking with these colleges, we figure we need to make this change to help our students have a fair admissions process to these universities. In doing so, we also researched area high schools, some in our DIRG as well, and took a look at how do they calculate their GPA. And as Ms. DeSenza scrolls through here, you will see that a lot of those area high schools are calculating GPA the way that we would like to propose to calculate it, which is a weighted 4.0 system. So moving away from our current 100 plus to the weighted 4.0.
So our recommendations is that we revise our GPA system for 22-23. And like Anna had just mentioned, moving to a 100 plus to a weighted 4.0. We've been working with our department leaders to solidify a viable implementation plan when it comes to leveling. So we're going to talk a little bit about levels now, and then we're going to go back to the GPAs. But just for a little bit of history, there has been some collapsing of levels in certain areas. Some of the elective areas, there's been some collapsing in earth science between CCP and CP, along with our modern U.S. history. So we do want to do sort of like a reconfigure phase collapse as we move forward. We still want to have 3 levels, as we currently have, but it depends, we want to weight them differently. So the new scale would be in line with many colleges and university recalculations. Southington High School, like I had already said, has been collapsing some of the levels. So we feel strongly that if we do this, we should rename them. Just sort of like that old, mentality. We don't want people to relate the new levels with the old ones. And we did some research with some other area schools, and this is what we sort of agreed upon. To have the first level would be like an academic level, and that on the transcript would just be the class. So if it's a biology class and it's at the academic level, it would just say biology. Then we would have an accelerated level, and that on the GPA weighting conversion would add an additional 0.50. And then we have many, many college level credit courses at Southington High School. And currently right now, honors and like AP, ECE and college level courses are getting the same weight. And we feel that, you know, a college level course with college level credit should earn an additional weight. So that's where we came up with the additional 1.0. Beth is going to, yes.
And just ask a question about that. So,
Okay.
for example, so say I get a 3.0 in that class. How does that get weighted into my?
So we're actually going to go next to that. If
Oh,
you could
okay.
just give us a minute. So I have my
Sure.
little
Okay.
mathematician on virtual live here for us. Beth, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Hi, Beth. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I think so.
So what we did was we kind of did a projection out. So currently our GPA system is based on a multiplication factor, right? So if a student gets a 90 in an honors or AP level course, it's multiplied by 1.2. In our proposal, we would be converting the numerical grade to an alpha grade, and then these would be what they'd be averaged in for their GPA. So if a student earned between a 97 and a 100 at an academic level course, they would have a 4.33 averaged in. Accelerated, they'd get that extra 0.5. And then if it was a college level course, they would get an entire point added in. This is much more similar to what the colleges use when they recalculate our GPAs. So it would give our students and families a more accurate representation of what they could expect regarding admission and scholarships. Teachers would still be grading using the numerical system, but then when it's converted over for that transcript and report cards, it would be converted to that alpha grade so we can issue a GPA on this scale. So how would this change what we look? So we wanted to look at different groups of students that we currently have and see how this change would impact their GPA and their internal rank. So this is the top 15 students from last year and what their current GPA would have been based on the system we've always had and then their internal class rank. And then we went through and we recalculated what a new GPA would be with our scale. There, of course, were some assumptions because in reconfiguring the levels, we were making assumptions on what the department leaders would determine the new level to be. But you can see the new GPA conversion there. We did only go out to 2 decimal places. You know, if needed, we could, of course, go out to 3 like there are currently. Because as you can see with this, you will have sometimes a shared internal rank. Where you see some significant changes are where students had a CCP level course. So that the top kids remained the top kids, and you see some flip-flopping, you know, towards the bottom of these top tier students, and that's based on the reconfiguring of the levels and the kids that didn't have all honors in college level courses. Ms. DeZenza, can you go to the next?
Yes.
And so this, we did a projection of some middle students and then the bottom third and bottom 10% of students. We could not recalculate rank because we did not recalculate all of the GPAs of all 472 students in the class. So we just gave a general idea of what a new GPA might look like based with this new system we're proposing. And when you look at the bottom 1/3, you do see a big change in their GPA, and that has to do with students who, on the old scale, earned a poorer grade in a CCP class, but since there was that multiplication factor of weighting, they got quite significant boost in their GPA. And that's an example of where we're coming from, you know, with our students and what we're trying to do to help them out for the colleges.
What you notice is that new GPA is aligned with what the universities are going to do when they receive our transcript. So this will give our students and families a much more accurate picture of what to expect for admissions and merit money.
And frequently students, I know that I get the question many times a year, how do I convert our GPA to a 4.0 scale? The college needs this, or the scholarship needs this, or the coach needs this. And there is not an exact calculation. We only can give them an estimate. So this would really help them on many different levels.
I have a question for you. Is there a standard recalculation formula that these universities and colleges have? Or is this just something that each admissions office, university designs, creates themselves?
They all have their own formulas. So
They
it's
all
not
have their own
100%
formulas.
exact.
Yeah, and that's why we put on some examples. What we try to do, there are a lot of similarities, even though they all have their own formulas, and we try to most closely align with what would be, beneficial for our students.
It's a good question. If they did, it'd make life a lot easier.
Right. And the reason why I asked that question is, number one, it give you a baseline and it would make it a lot easier. But I guess my follow-up concern to that is if we're essentially trying to nip it in the butt, so to speak, and do this recalculation of GPA before we present our student profile to a university or college, is what universities and colleges are we using to basically baseline our recalculation? Is it just UConn, or, is it UConn? Is that what we go for? Or should our baseline recalculation be based on Princeton?
We picked our, go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry, you can go.
I was going to say, I brought you back to the slide where we did kind of do some research regarding our students' top 10 schools.
These are the most widely attended schools by our students.
Yeah.
And so that's where we went, because that's where a large majority apply, a large majority get in, are accepted. So that's the standard that we use.
Okay, and maybe this is a further conversation that I'll have, individually outside of the board meeting here to get some more information and kind of wrap my head around this. But if these schools are where the majority of our students are applying and getting accepted, what is it doing for our top tier of students and or our bottom tier of students? Is it helping or hurting them when they go to other institutions that are more highly rated than these institutions that we're already seeing student success at? Isn't that the ultimate goal, to put forward our best student and get them into the best institutions possible? So my concern is, how are we changing our GPA profile to better position our students to get into better institutions?
Absolutely.
I can address that if that's okay. So when we are configuring this, it will not impact how any level university recalculates our students' grades. They're going to still do the same recalculation, but what it does is it allows the student and family to already have an idea if that's a place that they would get accepted to. So just by us reconfiguring this, it has no impact on how the college will recalculate. They are still doing it the same way. It's just that their recalculation will now more closely match what our students are expecting to hear.
And if I could throw out my own personal experience with this, going through with my sons. When my older son was applying for colleges, he was in Project Lead the Way. He didn't have any AP classes on his resume, but he had Project Lead the Way. He applied to 5 different colleges and was accepted into all 5. All 5 of them changed his GPA. They do that because one college didn't recognize Project Lead the Way as an AP, quote unquote, until he was in his sophomore year. at the college. Then they said, oh yeah, now we recognize Project Lead the Way. Oh, by the way, now we'll give you more money. Because at the time, they didn't recognize it when he applied. So every college looks at a student transcript and says, well, what do we know about Southington High School? We don't know anything. You give weight to this class, but we don't know what your basis is. We don't know what you start out at. So every college looks at that student differently. So when my son applied to Stony Brook versus WPI versus wherever else, UConn, they looked at him, each school looked at him differently. Same kid, same courses, but they changed everything around and offered him money based on what their thing was. So this, if you get to a number that you can say, all right, this is a college, this is an AP, I'm assuming that those are the college that you're talking about. The academic, they'll know at least what we're calling things. We're calling it an academic class. We're calling it a college class. That's how am I correct in what I'm looking at and what you're saying? Is that the correct assumption? Because as a parent, that would make life a lot easier when applying to college. From my experience, that would have made it a lot easier for
I
us.
do think like us removing the rank off the transcript a couple of years
That's
ago
another thing.
has helped our students get into some of those higher level colleges and universities. And we collect that data, so we saw the comparison of what our students have been getting accepted in the last 2 years since that happened. We have seen a lot more competitive schools because they're looking at something other than the rank. They were having interviews, they were doing, additional essays. So they were really looking at the child holistically.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong and or clarify, what we're calling an honors class and an AP class. From what I saw from the slides, we're ranking those the same.
Right now, yes.
Okay. It's my understanding that AP courses are tested at a recognized national level by virtually all universities within the country. It's not the same with honors, because honors is distinguished at the local level, not necessarily recognized at the same level as AP by colleges and universities. Is that correct?
Yes and no. The AP courses are widely accepted by many universities, but not by all, especially the elite schools. They do not accept AP credit.
They want your money.
They don't accept it.
They don't accept it.
But
Yeah.
at the national level, there is actually AP test.
Yes.
There is actually AP testing that if the college or university recognizes AP courses, they can then get the test results for that student from those AP tests that will help them in their college admission process. I'm understanding that is not the same for what we're calling an honors class. So why are we ranking them the same?
We're asking to rank them differently.
Okay.
We currently are ranking them the same. Our proposal is to
They're agreeing with
to
you.
change it, do a additional 0.50 for honors, and then give an additional 1.0 on the GPA for any college level course. So we
Okay.
have other courses at Southington High School besides advanced placement. We have many UConn ECE courses. We have Tunxus, Middlesex, and there's one more of areas. So we have other opportunities for students to earn college credit.
Jen and Anna, I have a question about all of this change. Looking at the other day at the newspaper of the honor roll of Southington High School, I got 2 emails from parents. They could not believe the number of students that were on the honor rolls from grade 9 through 12. It was like 2 pages full, okay? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, But will this change? Will this, and it's certainly going to have an effect, right? And when you look, I'm sure you look at the numbers. And the same thing with the middle schools. God bless all of them for being on the honor roll. But it is an extraordinary amount of kids. I don't know what the total number is, but would you agree that there's a total, really enough large number of kids on honor rolls? And is it because if we change this, it will change?
I can speak to that. That's actually not a phenomenon unique to the high school. I remember even during my time as principal at Kennedy,
I said that.
a parent calling me and saying, I just read the honor roll list, and he counted how many kids were, on it
unbelievable.
versus what was in the grade level. And he said, where's the honor in that?
Right.
If, and so we had a conversation about that. This evolves back probably to the opening of the parent portal for Power School, when families were logging on every time a grade was entered and emailing the teacher, you're not meeting my kid's needs. You're not a good teacher, and the constant attack, and the saying was that, the B was the new C, right? And C was the new D, and there was a worry about grade inflation over pushback. It's not unique to Southington at all. It's a national trend over whether grade inflation exists or not, which is why a lot of districts started to go to mastery-based learning, because it was based on standards.
Right.
Did you achieve the standard at a mastery level or not? Because grading can be subjective. We've done plenty of presentations, and I could certainly do more for you on the subjectivity of grading. And so that's a big part of the challenge for teachers, that they're under a lot of pressure. With that also said, the grade inflation that just comes from, we did a presentation to C&I with Mr. Stranieri several years ago, how many students were 4.0 or above. It was the top 130 students.
I know.
But that was based off of the current system. And we knew we didn't have 130 kids that were 4.0 students. Not to be critical of them, but that's a pretty hard metric to attain in this current system, in the new system, I mean.
This should change, I would think, the number of kids.
Yes, and I still think a lot of it has to do with how we assess students and determine levels of mastery against a standard, in a unit.
So, if I could just ask a quick question. So how do we settle, and I guess to a certain degree it has to do with some of the universities and how they regrade things. But again, like seeing the number, like it just stresses me out that it's not a bell curve. It's like overweighted type thing. I think part of the way that I look at it, and part of, we didn't really have the AP classes as robustly from when I graduated. It seems that if you're taking an AP class or you're taking a college level class, you're essentially taking that in 2 degrees, right? Essentially earning college credit to potentially save money, right? And then you're taking it at it's just a higher level of,
rigor,
complexity, right? So how do we get to the 0.5 and the 1.0 versus like doing maybe like a 0.25 or a 0.5? Again, going more to Mrs. Carmody's point of, again, the honor roll should be an honor. Again, like it should be the cream of the crop, the top 10%, 15%. It shouldn't be, and everybody gets a trophy the way that it's sort of evolved into as of lately. And do you find that this system, with those weights that we're proposing, do you think that that's in the best interests of that spirit versus doing this maybe like a 0.25 and a 0.5 instead?
In other words, do you think that that this new system will change the number of students that will achieve first honors? I would think that it would.
I don't know if I would stand behind that statement.
I can.
Go ahead, Beth.
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm not trying to do that.
It's a good question.
It's just,
I would say
it's
with the new
extraordinary
system,
when you
we
look
would
at the
have to
numbers, that's
determine
all.
what GPA would be first and second honors. So we didn't make a determination on that or a proposal on that. We would have to determine that, but I would think it would shift it at least a little bit.
So in one respect, there are 2 different conversations, right? As far as honor roll and reweighting. if you take a look back at this slide and go back to the reality of our current system inflates
Right.
the GPA.
Oh, there's no doubt about
And
that.
and
Right.
so leveling that field, whether and obviously they've done a due diligence in research and trying to attempt to what is the best recommendation. The question in terms of should it be a 0.25 versus a 0.5?
Right.
I don't know if Beth has an idea if we'd have to rerun numbers.
We were trying to do it so when they recalculated, it would
That it was
best align. But Beth,
with
you
what our
did the
top
numbers.
universities, yes.
Yeah, so we, Sherry Russman and I actually started this last year, and we did play around with that weighting factor. We did do the 0.25, 0.5, and then we did, thirds. We played around with it. And then we also looked at what the colleges use as conversion, and it's very typical that a college will add an entire GPA point for an AP college level course. So then we decided to stick with that, because that, when they are reweighting, is what we heard over and over again that they do. They add a whole point to a 4.0 scale for those college level courses. So that's how we ended up settling on this proposal.
I mean, again, I think it doesn't fix the problem though for me in the sense that.
Well, to Frank's point, it's
right.
Honor roll versus college admissions and merit money.
Right.
Right. Okay, so in that vein, I'd like to ask a quick question, and maybe Assistant Superintendent could answer first, and then you could answer as the counselor in the school, like speaking directly to our students and parents. If there are two school systems in this state, two districts that have the model GPA system, what are they?
We did the research on that. Part of what the counselors did when they took a look at how, if we were going to present different scenarios, we took a look at what our surrounding districts, and I think you had a slide that captured that at the beginning.
So slow, sorry. This one.
And
Actually
so
scans back.
what we're proposing is exactly what they have, or
No, I wouldn't say it's exactly what they have.
I don't know if we determined what would be a model in essence. We just did what was in
No,
our area.
we were looking at
Connecticut, we looked at other districts.
what other people were doing, what other districts were doing, what universities were accepting, how they were recalculating, and then what was our proposal that would situate our graduates in the best position for admissions and money.
because I guess what I'm getting at here is, if we've identified one or two other model districts within the state, have they released their information, their statistics, their data in doing the same research that you've done here, which is evident to us, but were you able to get their data and statistics that show that their model is successful on the going to the next level of colleges and universities? When their students are presented to those colleges and universities, are they seeing the success that we're currently not seeing with our system?
I think with different DERGs too, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where to start on that. I mean,
So yeah,
certainly
having a high school junior and a high school senior right now, and having just completed all the applications for all the schools, I can tell you that there's so many other factors that schools are looking at right now, actually beyond GPA. Certainly looking at kind of well-roundedness, extracurricular, community, civic service, SAT scores for test optional schools versus if you're willing to submit, and ACT scores. So I don't know if you look at schools they're getting into, what those kids are also contributing to their applications versus just the GPA alone, and determining what gets them in versus not. And I actually have kids in two different high schools that use two different systems. My daughter, who's a senior, uses the current system that we're speaking about here. So, and they have a very high acceptance rate at her school.
So basically what you are doing, Sean, if I like to just answer you and tell me if I'm wrong about this. What we're doing for our students, I believe, with this system is making them more in line with what the colleges are asking for. That is what we're doing, okay? Correct? That was the whole purpose of doing this. It's not going to be changing really the academic achievement of our kids. You know, they're still going to be achieving at the levels that they probably were previously. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to still, it's just the way we're calculating it. And Steve, you're right. They're looking at so many other things for kids. I mean, I have kids.
They're doing interviews now. They're submitting video portfolios. They're actually, because of the subjectivity of grading, they're all trying to get away from that.
Exactly. I mean, this is long overdue. We've talked about this for, oh gosh, we must know how many years that we talked about this, Dave? Many years about changing
12
this.
years, 15 years, it's.
Yeah, so it is long overdue. We give it a shot, and I think the parents are going to understand it better, and the students too. So,
The other side note, so you said you did kick around the 0.25 and the 0.5 weighing. Do you guys still have that data?
Beth, do you still have the data that you and Sherry did when you were kicking around the 0.25?
No, but I still have all of the transcripts that we used, so it would be very easy to get that.
Okay, and again, like I'm not asking for, I'm just kind of curious as to like how that would extrapolate in the, like, say, top 50, because again, like realistically, you know, I'm from a pretty diverse background myself, and with, you know, friends from high school and things like that. Again, I think that some, you know, AP classes aren't for everybody, and you know, I don't know if that should necessarily. It should definitely count more. A whole 1 point out of a 4-point system that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So and I'm just thinking more from like I get it, but again, like not everybody goes to college and things like that. So this is sort of this is what they have now.
It is a college level course, and they're
Right.
getting college level credit, and it's a college level curriculum. I mean,
And
I
it's a
think
lot
if you asked
harder.
a student that took an
I
AP
get,
level
but there's
course,
benefit in that. There's, you know, again, you're getting those college level credits. You're already getting a benefit from that rather than getting the full one. Again, 1 out of a 4-point grading system that's a lot, and I don't think it really. To me, I get more hung up in the fact that, like, well, again, everybody gets a gold star because, you know, we're, instead of the C, like you said, B becomes the new C and A becomes the new. Again, it's just it doesn't make any sense to me that we.
It's actually significantly less of weight than we've been currently giving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because right now we're giving 20% extra.
Okay.
So,
For the
like, if a
AP,
student
yeah.
gets a 90, they actually get 108 averaged in.
Which is insane. Yeah.
So right now it's drastically more than what we're proposing.
Okay.
So this reduces that.
Yeah. I'm just curious as
So
to
Darren,
like
yeah.
comparing the two.
I think this is long overdue. And I think the implementation timing is going to be critical. And it's going to be a culture shock to a lot of parents and students. I think now, once this gets approved, which I'm assuming it will be, I think we should start indoctrination with communicating to the parents, not just once, but monthly, weekly, or whatever it's going to take, so that when it goes and becomes implemented, we're not going to be lined up with a lot of people at the podium wanting to know what's going on.
Well, it's going to happen regardless.
Well, may I, because this is the first read.
Yeah.
If you think of another question, or you have, you know, a comment you want to make, yeah, you're looking at me.
No, we're just
No.
we're thinking about that.
Oh,
We're
okay.
just talking on the side. Sorry.
No, because this is it's so key as a parent who lived it. I totally understand, because every time you look at a college, each college is different and they have different requirements. And if we can simplify it for the families and the students, I think it's a win for everybody. But that being said, we all have it in the packet, in our board packet. So look at it. If you have any other questions, or you think of some, another number that you may want to have run or whatever, whatever the question is, get it to Frank, and, we have time. Yep.
So at our last personnel and policy meeting, this was one of the topics because as a board, we need to develop new policy around grading and weighting. So based on direction tonight, we would go to P&P, develop policy, and then it would be back to you for a first read.
Okay. Terrific. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing that with us.
I know that's
Thank you,
Beth. The amount of hours that you guys put into that, again, like
Yeah.
it's, please, like my questioning doesn't take away from any of that. Like you
Anna,
guys- I
Jen,
can tell you
Diane,
put
thank you for
the
being
time
here.
in.
Thank you for the work you've done. It is
Thank you, Beth.
appreciated.
She already gone.
She disconnected.
Like the
Thank you,
voice of the sky out there.
for staying with us. Okay, next on our agenda is the appointment of the UPSU Negotiating Committee, which is the Union for Paraeducators and ABA Therapists. Do I have the right ones? Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to contact me if you are willing to sit on the negotiations for that. Okay?
Do you have a start date on that?
Do I have a start date on that?
I believe the para contract expires at the end of this year. So
End of this year.
at the
Okay.
beginning of June, so it should be.
Okay.
No, I understand that, but I mean, when are the
Negotiations
negotiations
start.
going to start?
How about if we send you the dates and timelines, and then you could forward a reply to Colleen based on what works for you or not? Because I know you guys have travel schedules and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, resolution for Department of Mental Health and Addiction Demas. Let's see. Oh, okay. Do you
I
want me
can speak to this, yeah.
You would.
So if you remember in the spring, we received a grant and Christina Sims was the signatory on that grant. She's no longer an employee of the Southington Youth Services. And so this just transfers the name over to Megan Albanese, who does oversee the STEPS grant. So it's just a procedural motion.
Yeah, I move to approve the DMAS resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Darrenowski, I believe it's your favorite.
Our favorite.
To adjourn.
Second.
Oh, come on, gang.
Oh,
Oh, my gosh.
Name goes to Terry.
All those
Name
in
goes
favor?
to Mrs. Carmody. Ahoy.
Thank you. Oh, and folks, I have for each of you from Steve Hindrick. You wanted to share these?
He dropped one off for me. That was very nice of him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Van Pitt.
What is this?
Van Patch.
Oh my gosh, this is
That's going right on that leather jacket, Jasper.
Oh, the flight jacket.
His flight jacket.
Don't be
Hey,
jealous.
hey, we're going to come into the board meetings.